Hello, I'm Jonathan Sinton, Head of Secretariat for the Energy Efficiency Hub. The Hub is a platform for 17 member governments to share best practices in designing and implementing energy efficiency policy. Members also collaborate with the International Energy Agency, which hosts the Hub Secretariat, and with other international organizations, industry groups, and NGOs. Our core work is carried out in thematic, member-led task groups. We at the Secretariat also hold a series of workshops on special topics. Normally, these are only open to members to ensure candid exchanges. We're glad to be able to pull back the curtain from time to time, as we have done with the session you're about to see. It's a rare opportunity to see the kinds of exchanges that Hub members have found valuable, and I hope you will as well. Hello, and welcome to the next in the Policy Exchange series of the Energy Efficiency Hub. I'm Jonathan Sinton, Head of Secretariat for the Hub. Today we have a good lineup of speakers who have spent collectively many years wrestling with how to engage consumers, how to inform consumers, to encourage adoption of more energy efficient appliances. And so we will be talking with them about how to inform and how to engage consumers. So we'll start out with a scene setting from the IEA. Sophie Attali, who's an analyst here and who's worked for quite a few years in the field. Then we'll go to Saudi Arabia. We have Mohammed Alsultan here, who works with the Saudi Energy Efficiency Center and leads their programs on consumer engagement. Then we'll go to Niels Ladefoged, who's with the Directorate-General for Energy at the European Commission. We have also from the Energy Efficiency Commission in Ghana, Hubert. So we're excited to hear his voice, and we will also hear about CLASP's activities and lessons learned worldwide and in Europe as well from Nicole Kearney. So we will have short discussions from each of them, and according to our usual format, we'll try to devote about half of the session to discussion among them. After the session, which will be recorded, we'll produce a summary and exchange that with all of you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to go to Sophie to set the scene. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much, Jonathan. I will share my screen.
No, it's not working. She needs to fix it.
Okay.
It's not working?
We see your notes.
You see my notes. So now I didn't change anything, so my computer is very whimsical. So I'll stop sharing this. Sorry for that. It worked perfectly in the rehearsal, so.
That's okay. We can share it for you, shall we?
As you want, yes. Okay, let's do like this. You'll have to click several times, though.
That's fine.
Okay, sorry about that. So hello, I'm very happy to be in this, to have a chance to speak in this webinar, because I've been working on consumer information and engagement for a long time, and it's not easy. So I'm happy to have some experiences shared. I'm looking very much forward to knowing what's happening in some areas of the world. Next slide, please. So I thought that to dive in the subject, really, I just wanted to set the scene very quickly, because we know, we, the participants in these webinars, we know that working on appliances pays off. If you want more information, I will be very happy to circulate to anyone the graphs and the reports that the IEA has been producing on the topics, but I just wanted to remind some key facts. So we know that electricity consumption for appliances at the global level is growing, and sometimes it's very good because it means the quality of life is improving, but sometimes it's just too much. So since it's growing, we really have to do it super efficiently. We know that the saving potential is large. We have estimates that between 10 to 30% of the electricity consumption could be saved. We know that it's good for consumer bills. We know also that it's good at the point of sales because some recent research we've made show that efficient appliances do not have to be more expensive in shops. So that is actually a good news. We have insight also from policy tracking. So we, for example, for the MEPS, we know that more and more countries are developing MEPS. More and more countries are updating their MEPS to make them more stringent. However, we are not yet on track to reach our climate goals. So we need a bit more push, still some efforts to do. And finally, we know it's not a technical problem. It's not an innovation problem. It's rather how to make the best-in-class products mainstream products, and also how to remain consistent in implementing policies on the long run, so the MEPS and the labels. And I would like to underline personally that it's the good old policies, and we know that the longer they are implemented, the more they deliver. So it's not, these policies have the particularity that they can't be just one-off policies, and it's a bit the same for consumer information, actually. Next slide, please. So in an ideal world, oh, it's not the good version of the slide. Okay, in an ideal world and I said that fortunately does not exist, and I use quotation mark because you will see that this word is not really, it's a bit too dictatorial for being something we would really wish for. But in an ideal world, we would not need any consumer information or engagement because we would have like one standard to measure energy consumption all across the world. We would have one MEPS to apply to all manufacturers, and with a global calendar, then step by step manufacturers would know that from this date they should phase out that product. Inefficient products would just be simply forbidden. And actually, when you think about it, inefficient products are badly designed products, or there are products for which arbitrary, how can I say, we have chosen to ignore the external, the environmental externalities, whatever the reason. Probably in this world also consumer choice would be reduced, but would that be a real problem? I mean, for example, in France, we have over 3,000 commercial reference only of refrigerators. Do consumers really need to have to choose between 3,000 different models? Oh, okay. And therefore, in this world, products would just be efficient by default and no superfluous kilowatt-hour would be consumed. So the problem is that this world, even though we may wish for some aspects of it, does not exist. So we need consumer information and engagement. Next slide, please. I've chosen to give you just a few insights and examples because I could not summarize all what I wanted to say, so I made some choice. But something that I think is really key is to understand that these consumer information programs is not made for us because we are energy geeks. We understand everything about energy. And if you participate, if you have the chance to participate in a consumer focus group, you will immediately see that it is not the case of the population in general. They do not know much about energy. So this is why our policies that are rather complex must be accompanied by information. Otherwise, they will miss their target and objectives. Next. The first point then is that culture matters. What I mean by culture is two things. The first one is that energy and environmental education is key. Do people understand what is a kilowatt hour, how it is produced, and with what impact, for example? I think the answer is no. And when you see the labels, the energy labels that are quite complex, this is an example from Peru, but we have the same in many countries. We know research shows that consumers look only at the color scale. And if we are lucky, they look at the letter, and that's it globally. So, of course, if we want them to know a bit, to understand a bit more, we have to get them interested. It made me think that my first ever meeting at international level was in Denmark in 1994, in the previous century. And I have learned that the kids in Denmark are taken to their local utilities to understand what is a kilowatt hour and to see with a meter that if you boil your potatoes with a lid, you make some savings. And of course, if you see this as a kid, when you grow up into an adult in the position of buying an appliance, you pay attention and you have a kind of natural interest for this type of labels, and maybe you would like to dive in the information that is written in very small on this label. Next. However, the other aspect about culture is the environment in which we live and the messages that we get every day, whether we want it or not. And 15 years ago, I did a study for the UK government that wanted to understand why their market was not that good from the perspective of energy efficiency, because they had the exact regulatory framework, the same framework as the other countries in Europe, the same manufacturers providing appliances. However, their market was not as good as the ones of their neighbors. And so we've researched in every directions. And when I came to London to make the final presentation, I stepped out of the train and I faced a huge billboard saying, Best Buy. And I think this is very important. If you are in an environment surrounded by messages such as this one, Best Buy, or it could be something different, of course, it is even more difficult to get an interest in energy efficiency that may be a little more expensive sometimes, or that forces you to make life cycle cost analysis, etc. So when you develop your messages, it's important to know that they will be facing much more powerful messages in the society, and you have to integrate yourself in this. Next, please. So education and information programs have an obvious impact, but are very difficult to quantify. So my advice would be, anytime it is possible to quantify this kind of soft tools, let's say, please do it, because in general, technical staff are very often asked to justify the additionality of these programs. But we know that when they are not there, some MEPS or some labels may be totally inefficient. But it's very difficult to prove with some kilowatt hour numbers. Next slide. Sorry, push button. Okay. Also, the programs should be implemented on the long run to be able to match a variety of situations and provide the information at the good moment. So, fortunately, consumers do not buy an appliance every day. If you are buying today a refrigerator, it means last time you did it, hopefully, was 10 years ago, and there are great chances that the label has evolved since the last time you bought a fridge. And you cannot expect that consumers will learn each time how does it work now? How does it? So it means they have to have the information at hand when they need it. And as we buy, at the level of a country, you have always people buying things, and they need to be able to catch the information at the good moment. Next, please. Also, when you work with information programs for efficient appliances, you will have to work with middlemen very often. So importers, retailers, installers, civil society representatives, etc. And each of them have their own language. In my experience, this is the most time-consuming activity, the most difficult, because these stakeholders, for example, retailers, their job is to sell and is to make money. It's not to push for energy efficiency. So all your program will have to work on how they can use your messages on energy efficiency so that it serves their economic activity, which is something absolutely normal. So even if it takes time, these are absolutely crucial intermediaries. Next, please. I think it's my last one. The messages also should be tested. So this is, again, I insist, because sometimes we think that everybody will understand the language we speak, but really consumers do not. So please have focus groups as much as possible. And the messages should be simple and intuitive, it is as much as possible. And it's a problem because energy efficiency is complex and does not offer many opportunities to involve emotions, whereas we know that emotional communication is the most successful. So I took an example here on the right of an NGO communication, and it's not by accident that it's an NGO, it's the WWF. And it says, it's from the Swiss branch, and it says, "Thank you for acting before the climate collapses," or something like this. And it directs to a website that selects the most efficient appliances available on the Swiss market. And this is one of their most successful billboard. And they saw the number of visits on the site really go up because this animal, and in this situation, triggered a lot of emotional reactions, and it was pretty successful. Unfortunately, governments often do not dare to go on the emotional field. And this is also maybe something for the future that we should work a bit more on. Next, please. The messages should, of course, relate to the wallet, but I would personally argue that they should also relate to the planet. So I have argued a lot with the French Energy Agency that says that we should only speak about savings and money savings, etc. But in advanced economies, this argument sometimes is not possible. And so because the products are more expensive for a reason or another, or because sometimes we face a new technology that is more expensive at a certain time, and people should be ready to invest a bit more just because it reduces the environmental impact. We can, at least in developed economies, we can go for this education. It is time that citizens really understand the whole aspect of it and don't limit themselves only to the economic savings they could make. And finally, I think the tools we are developing should be user-friendly as much as possible and part of their daily life. And I wanted just to quote the example of the Chinese label, which was, I think, the first mandatory one to use a QR code. And they developed an application. But the good thing is that, first of all, in China, people flash all the time QR codes just for anything, much more than in Europe. And therefore, a QR code was a logical tool. The government knew that it would be used by the population. And secondly, the app that they developed also contains other services. You can reach the after-sales services. You can have maintenance information about the product you bought. You can also store your warranties and come back to them if you are looking for them. So it means that it's not something that you use just at the time of buying, but that you may use also for the whole lifetime of your appliances to make also a more efficient use of it once it's installed in your home. So with this, I am very eager to learn from your experiences and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sophie. And you've touched on a lot of themes that I'm sure we'll hear in the coming minutes, about meeting consumers where they are, meeting them often through channels that they're using, and using terms that are culturally appropriate. One of the messages that also emerges is that those messages, the tools, need to evolve over time. And in terms of making sure that those programs are still there, that quantifying programs to justify them, I think that's also an important message. Now, let's go to Mohammed to hear about experience in Saudi Arabia. Mohammed, it's your show now.
Oh, yeah, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Mohammed, and I am the lead of the division of the production and digital contact of the awareness team in Saudi Energy Efficiency Center. And I'm going to talk to you today about more about our awareness and approach to Saudi Arabia. And energy efficiency is, let's say, a fairly new concept. It's about 10 years ago we launched this program. So it's still, well, still people are, but we have some good results about it. So first of all, we have, like, let's say, 3 main pillars that we use in creating our contact and how to educate people about energy efficiency. So we always talk about what is energy efficiency, what is the energy efficiency label, and what should I do to be efficient on a daily basis. So all the tips before buying and after buying. So we always include this in our campaigns. And just to show you an overview of our campaign, since 2014, we launched all these campaigns, about more than 30 campaigns. They're all 360 mass campaigns for everyone in Saudi Arabia. And until recently, the last campaigns we did is a lighting light bulb campaign, also dishwasher campaigns. This was in conjunction with the new dishwasher energy label. And just to talk to you about our channels here in Saudi Arabia, we always, for each campaign, things are changing. Even like the Saudi people they migrate to different channels. So we do a full analysis for each campaign, then we choose the right channels to use. And we
Mohammed, sorry to break in, but your slides aren't advancing.
Let me try it again.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
So yeah, so we're talking about the channels. As I said, we do some analysis for each separate analysis for each campaign. And so we try to target every single person in Saudi Arabia and with different regions. We using old media and new media and offline and online. So that's our target. And we always, like I said, we do this monitoring before the campaign. We meet with all the suppliers and providers of these channels, and we monitor our progress during the campaign. And even after the campaign, we do some another extra analysis. Also, we do 2 surveys per year, and these surveys depends on like what we choose for the next time, like what kind of messaging we see people are still weak or still need more knowledge about in our energy efficiency messages. And just one of the main things also I want to talk about is we have on the left here, that's our main program, awareness program. It's called the TAQA. But one of the new things we're doing now, and we recently launched, is TAQA Kids. And we're aiming for children from 4 to 12 years old. And this is a fairly new program, and we're doing it's this kind of separate awareness program for children with their own special messaging and approaches. And this is what we're working on mainly on more this year. And just so you know, we're doing some theatrical plays, cartoons, and even more meeting with them in schools and public places and malls and parks. So this is one of the fairly new programs we have, is aimed for children and to instill all the energy efficiency and awareness about saving energy in the next generation. And these are some of the campaigns where we did in the past. And as you can see, it's different and it's more targeted for local, and it's all simple messaging, so all regions in Saudi Arabia can understand our messages. And just lastly, I just want to show you these are the key numbers we have. We did more than 31 campaigns, more than 59K outdoor ads, 35K TV and radio spots, and 893 million mobile impressions, and 6 billion social media impressions. And this resulted in an increase of more than 85% of knowledge of the energy labels of home appliances, and a more than 91% increase of knowledge of the car and tire labels, energy efficiency label. So this is real quickly a brief about what we did in terms of awareness these past years. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. That's really impressive, and I think is an example of best practice in executing campaigns. And I'm sure there'll be quite a few questions about this. Really fascinating. Niels, let's go to you next. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I was actually one of those kids in the 70s when in primary school that where we had the household classes and cooking classes in school. The local electricity company came by, and I can confirm what Sophie said. It has been very cost-effective savings. I think I still cook eggs and potatoes and pasta in very little water. So that's really a cost-effective engagement. So it's really great to see from Mohammed that you also have kids on the radar screen. I think it's really for the long term a very cost-effective effort. What I will speak about from the EU side is somehow different because we are united in diversity. That's the EU slogan, and direct communication to consumers is a challenging thing for the EU level because we have so many different official languages and cultures. So we at the EU level from Commission side try to kind of focus on the substance, and then often we pay projects to communicate and member states communicate at a national level. So, but we have a common tool, and which I'll explain a bit about. Next, please. We call in EU we call minimum energy performance requirements. We call it EU eco design. So next, yeah. So we have actually since '94 when Sophie was in Denmark, that was the year the first energy label started, and we have now 3 generations. The fridges. This is the fridge. Label, and in parallel we have the eco design. Next, please. Next. Which is the minimum performance requirement, where we have a legal mandate to set requirements at the minimum life cycle cost for consumers. And so this is what we try to do. We optimize it from a cost perspective for consumers and set the minimum there. And then, of course, what you can find in the shops and with labels is stuff in principle that is beyond that. And one of the advantages of this is that indeed industry and retailers are actually like the energy label because it sometimes helps them sell more expensive appliances because they have a better rating. Although that correlation is not a one-to-one, I should stress. Next, please. Sometimes we also set air pollutant limit values or performance requirements or information requirements and spare part availability requirements, repairability requirements in the eco design. And I may come back to that. I think I'll come back to that. Next, please. So these are the products covered. Just to let's stress the importance of this program. More than around half of all energy used in the EU is used with a product or appliance regulated by this portfolio of policies. Next, please. And in terms of communication, we do have, since last year, we have a one-stop shop for information on energy efficient products. You have the URL there. We've tried to make sure different segments can find relevant information, both consumers, but also suppliers and retailers that have to implement and comply with these policies. And also there is also a policy section which is focused on how we do these things and how the rules are prepared and how one can follow the ongoing policy developments. But this is in a sense just a website. The main tool for communication is then energy labels. Yeah, one more, please. And this I think is a nice example. This is the next one that's gonna come here in July. It's gonna hit the shops. So we're gonna have an energy label and eco design requirements for smartphones and tablets in the EU. And you can see here the label. And apart from the energy ratings, which is a kind of key feature and red thread in the 30 years of history, and which, by the way, EU citizens, I think this, apart from the Euro symbol, this is probably the second best European symbol they know, the energy label. It's trusted by consumers. 3/4 of consumers say when asked that they use this and it influences their purchasing decisions. What you see here below is though that we try to add some salient supplementary information to illustrate. The first information you see here is basically how long the smartphone battery lasts before you have to recharge it, how many hours it operates. The next one is what if you drop your smartphone on the floor 2 days after you bought it, how resistant is it to free falls? the symbol below is how many charging cycles is the battery designed to last. The third symbol is the repairability score, which is how easy it is to repair the phone. And that, of course, is a kind of proxy indicator. It's both useful to consumers, because many people, consumers have the incidents that something breaks and needs to be replaced, and then instead of buying a new one, they could perhaps repair. So this is a way of both addressing consumer costs and consumer convenience, and also the embedded impacts of producing smartphones, because of course smartphones, the energy associated with their life cycle use is not only in the far from in the operational lifetime, it's also in their production and end of life. And one way of minimizing that part is making them last longer, and repairability is one feature in that. And repairability is information for consumers, but it's also a signal to the manufacturers, of course, to get a higher score. They will redesign their models to have a better score. And what you see there, we will also apply to tumble dryers. This has just been agreed and will come into effect a few years from now. And the final symbol is a resistance to ingression of dust and water. Again, one of the most common thing that happens to the failures of a phone is that you drop it in water accidentally, and then you'll have to buy a new one unless it's well protected. So again, it's user-friendly information, user-relevant information, but it's also relevant for the embedded impacts of prolonging lifetime, and that's the mandate we have to have from the legislator to address make energy labels. Next, please. Yeah, and what I didn't say was, of course, the modern like the Chinese label. I'm very interested to hear. I wasn't aware that the Chinese label had a QR code as well, but so do we. And if you click next, please, then you're taken to the database where the products are registered. Next, please. And there you can look it up on a smartphone if you're in a shop, or if you are on a desktop computer, you will see a different layout. Of course, you'll get all the product information on that product that we have from the manufacturers. Next, please. And both the label, but also detailed product information, and that can contain information about your website addresses for repair information, or repair spare part costs, and other things. This is increasingly a hub that we kind of use to make things available related to the product. Next, please. Yeah, user manuals, repair information, and so on. These are the kinds of things that could be added there. Next. And then we have a search portal where you can search in the entire, we have 1.8 million models right now, energy labeled models of different products. And you can search in the public interface. And so this is really a market transparency. And one more thing, there is a feature which I'd like to flag here. Click, please. Voila, for any search result you have, you can, with one click, you can get the distribution across the energy classes, both in numbers and percentages. That's real time. This is really extraordinary and unprecedented market transparency, and I think it's useful for consumers, for buyers, also public buyers, but it's also useful for the manufacturers and suppliers, of course, to see where they are in the market. It doesn't contain sales data. It contains only the models registered, but it still gives a good impression of where things are. Next, please. And so this is what we have. It's our ambition is not really to attract directly, I think, consumers for the reasons I explained before, but we work with the big platforms here. You see Amazon. Next, please. Where they use APIs to from our database to show the labels correctly. Next, please. And product information sheet as well. But that's legal requirements that must be available, and it's easy to comply with thanks to the database. Next. And others are there. This is a big retailer of furniture, IKEA, furniture and white goods, and below you have Google, which we also work with. Next, please. So to make them show even in quite compact formats, in their shopping bar, you can see the energy label is there in the European versions of Google's platforms, so that consumers already before clicking in onto a specific product have seen the colored label. So I think that's quite promising. All this is quite new. This is only the last version of the energy labeling regulation that we actually have this database, and we're only bringing it out now since a few years now. Next. That's it. Thank you. So this is our tool for consumer engagement.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Niels. And I think that last bit about April is a great example of how programs need to evolve along with markets to as so much of purchasing of appliances moves to e-commerce. Making sure that information is available that way is great. And then I was really interested in the labels for phones. So essentially that's turning the label into a mini one-stop shop for consumer information for what they care about. Now let's move to Hubert to talk with us about Ghana. Hubert, the floor is yours. If you're able to join. I think I hear a little click there. Hubert, I can see that you're unmuted. I'm afraid we can't hear you at the moment. Maybe we'll come back to you. Why don't we go ahead to Nicole with CLASP, and then we will return and see if Hubert's able to join us. Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much for inviting me to share CLASP's experiences and insights. I don't have any slides today, but I'm happy to follow up offline with any useful resources. Yeah, it's really encouraging to hear the great work that Saudi Arabia and the European Commission have done, and as we'll hear from Ghana as well, everything they're doing to make the energy label and appliance efficiency more accessible and interesting for consumers. I've been focused on work in Europe the past few years, so I've been speaking with several colleagues at CLASP to get a better picture of what's been working, what they've been doing in other countries. I'd say after speaking with them and hearing Sophie, Mohammed and Niels speak today, I think what really stands out to me is the diversity of approaches taken in each region. And yeah, I'd say there are so many different ways that we can engage consumers in the transition to greener technologies. We've of course heard some of them already from some of the speakers, but I wanted to highlight a couple. As we've heard already, setting that baseline of consumer understanding and awareness is really the first step to gauge what level and kind of effort will make the most impact in the region. And really the ultimate goal of the energy label is to have a strong brand and recognition of the energy label, to build trust and credibility with consumers, so they actually use and refer to the label or other related tools to inform their purchasing decisions. And what I've seen is that some regions develop a clear message or even a tagline with the label to ensure it sticks. CLASP worked with the Indonesian government to do just this. We found out that awareness levels of the label were very low across the country, especially outside of the capital, around like 5%. And our research showed that the economic message, the wallet message, really resonated with the public, as it does in many other countries. So the tagline, "More stars, more savings," is used wherever the label is used to really make sure that message sticks with the public. And I need to double check the numbers, but I believe that following a series of consumer engagement efforts, some of which I'll mention today, that recognition has increased to around 70%. And just another example in Brazil, the Procel Seal brand was inspired by the Energy Star program to really create a recognizable symbol that consumers can trust when making purchasing decisions. And over the years, ProCell has successfully achieved that. We've seen and supported many different awareness raising initiatives over the years. As Sophie already mentioned, it can be really challenging for governments to directly engage with the consumers, especially when the materials we're working with are more technical. Those who, might be more technical, the geeks, or those who are environmentally conscious will seek out, the necessary information, but you also have to try and engage those who don't. And this is where training the trusted trainers has been very effective. Sophie already mentioned how important it is to work with the middlemen, such as the consumer organizations, especially those who are doing their own testing and writing reviews of products, who can point to the importance of appliance energy efficiency. She also mentioned the retailers, the technicians and installers. So making sure they are all aware of the energy label and the benefits of appliance efficiency is really critical to achieving greater reach. I learned of a very interesting approach in Indonesia that I hadn't really heard of before. So CLASP recently organized a series of training workshops for junior journalists about the National Energy Efficiency Labeling Program. We worked with the Journalism Association and the government to raise awareness of appliance energy efficiency and to help journalists understand the topic and identify opportunities to write about it from the national to the local level. This was a pretty innovative approach, which resulted in having over 20 very different articles published in different papers across the country, covering, for example, how efficient products helped a local coffee shop save money. So something really, accessible, to stories about the dumping of inefficient air conditioners on the market, which wouldn't have got as much as attention had they not received that training. They've really been able to have a broad reach, addressing energy efficiency from a local and very relevant perspective. And we've seen some tangible impacts as a result. For example, based on the new media attention, there was a bigger push from government to require that local authorities set new green public procurement requirements for products, so that only the highest starred products can be procured. There are also other exciting showcases for energy efficient products and the label. We hear about these education programs. I think that's a wonderful tool. In Indonesia, again, we organize some local events in collaboration with manufacturers who would speak to the community about the benefits of the efficient products, working with retailers who might have installed an efficient air conditioner or so. And then the manufacturers gave away those products. So it was a bit of a gimmick, essentially, but it helped raise awareness through word of mouth. And I think we'll hear about some other interesting initiatives. Say in Ghana, I know that they've had some fun TV cameos of the energy label that really brings the message directly into people's homes. And then, as we heard from Saudi Arabia, these traditional or digital communications campaigns are really important at getting the word out, and they're particularly helpful if they're an ongoing effort rather than a one-time event, such as the radio, TV adverts, social media campaigns. And then just, I wanted to also touch on the topic of compliance. So, we also want to make sure that the public and other stakeholders can have trust in the appliance energy efficiency program and the label. So some countries communicate to the public the work that they've been doing to check that products actually perform as claimed. And before this call, I visited India's Star Label website, and the first thing that came up on screen was a pop-up I can actually support. It was a consumer alert to highlight a couple of products that had failed testing recently. They also, in India, they publish adverts with these kind of consumer alerts in national newspapers. So, the public not only sees that there is a risk and they can avoid those products if they're looking to buy that kind of product, but it also becomes more and more ingrained in the everyday. So yeah, there are very diverse approaches to getting consumers to think about and want to buy efficient products. And I'd say programs need to come at it from all different angles, depending on what makes sense at the country level or the regional level. And then maybe just finally, a bit of a caveat to Sophie's suggestion to relate consumer messages to the wallet and the planet in particular. I think we need to consider how to engage the public especially when we start to see increasing climate skepticism in different regions, especially when we talk about decarbonization. We found that the financial angle isn't always relevant, depending on national energy prices or perhaps the higher upfront cost of purchasing a more efficient appliance. We've seen culture wars erupt in the US around the topic of gas cooking, we've seen challenges with heat pumps in the media in Europe because the climate or environmental message has distanced some of the public. So I think it's really critical to consider what other benefits or risks will motivate the public in the media, how to frame the right messages, and what messengers to use to get that message out. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much, Nicole. And it's an important reminder, again, that being nimble in messaging is important. I think that's why another reason why Saudi Arabia's approach with the frequent surveys is an example of really good practice. And thanks for bringing in examples from Indonesia, fourth largest country by population, very diverse regional markets. A tough place to work, but really important one to work in. Let's now go to Hubert. I'm glad you've been able to reconnect, Hubert. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great, yes, and thank you for the opportunity once again. Sorry for the technical hiccup I had. Yeah, so just listening to the other speakers, Ghana, Sub-Saharan Africa is not anything different, except that we have quite a unique situation in terms of the kind of appliances that come into our market. So predominantly, Ghana, just like any other African countries, is at the receiving end of obsolete used appliances. And so we had to take a very bold step to be able to find an international tool that can limit the importation of such products. Now, we are not just focusing on the used obsolete ones in the case of dumping, but also the new substandard products that were entering the African market, specifically Ghana and other African countries. So we came up with the MEPS, Minimum Energy Performance Standards, for refrigerators, air conditioners, and 17 more appliances. Now, having come up to set this minimum criteria, how do we communicate that to the consuming public, to the importers to be able to appreciate that? So first of all, what we decided to do was make sure that the products that have been approved by the Energy Commission comes with performance test reports on the ratings. And these information are updated into a database, which we call the GH Certified Appliance App. So just like Niels mentioned, we have been able to look at not reinventing the wheel, but also taking best practices and situating it to the Ghanaian context. So we have come up with a new label, which also has a QR code indicating the registered products. So consumers have the choice to download this app, search the model numbers, or they can easily scan the QR code. Now, interestingly, the QR code gives you information on the performance of the product you are about to purchase, and also goes ahead to calculate the amount in terms of monetary value you would pay for your bills. You know, it's very important that Sophie also mentioned that it's not just about the wallet, but people usually want to see how much in terms of bills they will be paying. The app also gives the consumer the opportunity to get the nearest shop, nearby shop. So what we did was, during market surveillance, we took GPS locations of various shops which we have visited. We read the compliance levels of the shops, and that has been updated into the app. So it allows consumers to be able to check the nearby shop and the compliance levels of these shops as far as the standards and labeling is concerned. The other part is also the QR code. And the QR code plays a unique role, not just for the consumer, but also for manufacturers and importers. We are trying to keep it an open playing ground so that consumers are able to tell whether such products have been faked in terms of the labels or they are genuine. On the other hand, importers are able to check whether their competitors are faking the requirements in terms of the energy efficiency, or indeed these are figures that have been tested and established. So it allows consumers and then also importers to be able to compete in the market at an equal playing field. When we look at reaching out to the public, we use the traditional media space, which is television, radio, the low-hanging fruit of using social media by coming up with adverts and videos where we can share on these platforms at very less cost compared to the traditional media. We've also used flyers and also targeted drama. You know, in Ghanaian context, there are a lot of consumers who like to watch particular soap operas, local soap operas. So we try to engage some of these traditional actors to act in a particular way that will depict energy efficiency message. And that has gone very well with the consumers appreciating when they see their famous actors, you know, act the role of energy efficiency out and the savings. It's also important to note that apart from this, we've also used the approach where the traditional media, like Nicole mentioned, the media is the one that will be spreading this information. Now, how are they aware of energy efficiency? So we have sessions, stakeholder engagements with the media, specifically the editors of the various radio stations, to engage them on the provisions of the regulations, let them understand some of the language and the terminologies to use when communicating. And that has also helped in some reports that have come out very clearly in terms of media reportage. In the space of the radio interview, we brought up an innovative approach, which is to incentivize our listeners. And so when we go to speak on energy efficiency, we try to get some award in terms of the efficient appliances. And so after a session, we have a quiz where the general consumer is asked questions, and there's a phone-in session. Once you're able to call in and answer a question, you are entitled to win some prizes ranging from microwave ovens, you know, to rice cookers and some of the appliances that are covered under the new energy efficiency. And that has caught up very well with the consumers, and they are always excited and asking the radio stations, when next can you have Energy Commission come to tell us about energy efficiency? So the challenge now is to look at getting more funds to buy these equipment, efficient equipment, as incentives for the consuming listeners to also appreciate the information. We've done the same for town hall meetings. And in town hall meetings, we have the session with the various stakeholders. And then after that, we have a quiz. You know, all of this is to let people appreciate and buy along the whole concept. The last two sessions I will mention is on the government agencies. And so we know that government is the largest purchaser of some of these appliances. And so we have come up with a green public procurement, training, you know, procurement officers, account officers who will be giving out monies to buy this, because traditionally they are looking at the budget and it's always the least cost approach they would use. So we try to educate them on how to make sure that they are going for the life cycle cost analysis and also gaining on purchasing energy efficient products. Last but not the least, I will talk about Sophie's idea of involving the planet and not just the wallets. So in our label regime for cooling appliances, we have introduced the global warming potential and then the refrigerant component. And this helps us to be able to educate the consumer, not just on efficiency, but also on the savings to the environment when they buy some particular cooling appliances. And so that has been very helpful. And so far, consumers are making an informed decision on efficiency and environmental, savings to the nation. The last one is on political influence. The politician who will make sure that these regulations, these information go down, do not really appreciate all the talks about gigawatts and megawatt savings and all of that. The politician is thinking about how to win the next election. So how do you involve communication to the politician to appreciate this? What we have tried to do is to use the gigawatts and megawatt savings that we'll be making and quantify it into projects. So assuming you were to make this savings from enforcing energy efficiency, instead of maybe 65 gigawatt hours, we are translating it into how many schools that can build, what kilometers of road that can construct. And that is what the politician understands, because he wants to win the next election and wants some social amenities that can be saved from these projects we are making. So communication-wise, Ghana has tried its best to champion some of these information out there. And most importantly, as I keep on saying, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to take the best practices, contextualize it, and make sure that it is in the African setting as well. And this has gone very well. And we hope to further expand the scope of appliances under this regulation. So thank you for my initial submissions.
Hubert, thank you very much for that lightning tour of a really complete, comprehensive set of approaches to ensuring that information about efficient appliances is reaching a whole variety of different audiences and through different channels. I think it's quite unique, as it should be. I mean, it's a great example of how the approach is adapted to the environment. Now, we enter now our discussion segment of the program. We do have a question online now, and we'll get to that later after we have some questions that you ask of each other. And Hubert, as the last speaker, let's start with you. And I'd like you to direct a question to another one of the speakers, or to all of them, a question that any of them may answer. Hubert, back to you.
Yes, so I would want to find out from Niels and probably Saudi Arabia on how the savings, potential savings, are communicated. So for example, we've noticed that you have introduced more appliances, more products such as mobile phones and tablets into your scheme. How are these savings communicated? Because it's important to quantify the measures that will come from this. And as I said, we want to tap into the best practices as it's done. Thank you very much.
Great. Niels, would you like to start?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And thanks for the very interesting presentation, Hubert, as well. We actually, for the EU, we annually publish a report called the Eco-Design Impact Accounting Report. It's precisely an effort we made to try to quantify with a kind of basically bottom-up modeling. And based on the regulatory impact assessments we publish when we when we adopt the regulations, we always do so on the basis of regulatory impact assessment, where we try to model the impacts. And so based on those cumulative impact assessments and observable trends on energy consumption and so on, every year we make a very, very, very comprehensive and I would say quite impressive report. It's there's a lot of technical details, but also a lot of graphics and nice narrative around it. And so we have that as a basis, but that's actually too heavy to communicate on a day-by-day basis. Lately, what we try to do is something to have some key figures that are very relatable. To give an example, we have just, as I said, we will adopt new requirements on external power supplies, and those are of course very small savings. It's new requirements on no load efficiency and low load efficiency and so on. Per se, for the consumer, it's not very interesting, but in the aggregate, because there are so many of these external power supplies, they mount up, and we've used the metric of electric vehicles charged, because people in the public in Europe are very much aware of the transition from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles, and then there's also a lot of debate and awareness about the fact that we then need to put up a lot of wind turbines or solar cells and find space for that to generate that new electricity demand. And so, for instance, in the case of external power supplies, the savings that will by 2035 will amount to roughly 600,000 electric vehicles charged per year. So, you know, the savings from the EPS adjustments in the regulation will mean we will have to construct less wind turbines or solar, corresponding to charging 600,000 EVs per year. And we try to find that kind of salient parameters. It may not go equally well down everywhere. We also have figures on annual savings per household. So those we publish as well. In the EU, it's around we're between 200 and 300 euros per household per year. We're saving now with the portfolio, and because the savings increase as the stock turns over, by 2030 we're close to 500 euros per household per year on savings accumulated, but per year from the portfolio of. So we tried, of course, to make it relatable and offer the policymakers and offer our communication experts. I'm not one, but offer those a kind of a menu of relatable figures, I would say.
Great, thanks so much, Niels. And over to you, Mohammed, now.
Yeah, for us, like in addition to the reports, we try to make it as simple, as Sophia said, not for the geeks, but for the regular people. Like we, throughout the year, we always do through social media and other medias, we do these comparisons with real numbers, real savings between, like, let's say, the lower energy AC or the higher. So we always give them all this information with real numbers of in terms of money and savings. And also we do a whole household, and we even did this video where if you wait from the moment you wake up until you sleep, if you do all these tips, and at the end of this video we showed this number and how much you lowered your monthly or bill. So we always try to make it simple for everybody. Well, in addition, we have these reports, but we also make it to the public real numbers and real savings. And so this is for the individuals, but we also had this campaign where, as a whole nation, what are the savings? So we had this campaign, we shared this number, how many like barrels of oil we saved since implementing these energy labels, and also how much the environment was impacted. So how many the carbon emissions of like billions of carbon emissions lower in Saudi Arabia. So we also do these two approaches as a whole nation, and also as individuals, and we also give both for people who are they care about the wallet, let's say about their own wallet, or as the environment, or as a whole nation. So we always publish in different ways, designs, even videos, fun videos for these kind of things.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're right. I am muted. So thanks, Mohammed. Thanks. It sounds like there's a lot of interesting innovation going on in communication there, and the video about savings from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. It puts me in mind of fitness apps that show you where you are compared, during the day compared to where you are usually. So I can see how something like that would be interesting. So let's go now to Nicole. Nicole, what question do you have, and who would you like to pose it to?
I was wondering, it's really great to see these tools, the databases, the apps, the QR codes, everything there to make access to information easier to consumers. And I was wondering if the Commission, the European Commission, or if the Energy Commission in Ghana, or if Saudi Arabia has any data on how many users are actually accessing the tool, and whether they're able to identify, is it consumers, is it others, and then how you use that to inform your program.
Right. So why don't we, Hubert, why don't we go to you first? Do you keep data on how the app
so it's quite difficult, but initially what we decided to do to monitor was the downloads. So the number of downloads that have been made on the app is what we use as our indicators. But perhaps we can look around, the actual usage. Sometimes it becomes difficult when you are monitoring that, because you would need IP addresses and all, and people start to stay away from using it because they feel like you are monitoring their activities. So there is a thin line between that. So for now, what we use is the downloads. Once you download it, we assume you are interested in using the app. Thank you very much.
Great. And so, Niels, I would imagine the privacy regime in EU probably comes into play here.
Well, we don't log individuals, but we do know where the let's say we do know from which countries the requests are coming, by IP addresses and so on. Our public interface is hosted on an Amazon cloud service, a data center. And from that, we can retrieve all kinds of information. I wouldn't say we've explored it a lot so far. We do follow kind of overall traffic. We have roughly 1 million page visits per month on April. It's fairly stable. It's up since the start, of course, but it's been fairly stable. And we, of course, I think we will work to increase it even further. But as and when there's new interesting material, we are revamping the user phase right now. It's not super user friendly. And I think we have means of detecting whether, to what extent it comes from QR code scans, and what it comes from API use and so on. And we have to publish a report on the evaluation or progress of implementation of the labeling regulation later this year. So we will be looking into providing in that report some figures and some analysis on how this is working and how this is taken up. I think it's no shame to say that in the scale of things, and this is a large IT project even for the Commission, and we still feel that it's a bit of an unknown diamond or jewel we have, and we have a lot of hopes for it. One of the things that I think will help is that as I said, we work with the platforms. So many of the big platforms, but also retailers actually use April now with APIs, and I think this alone will grow traffic. And I can certainly say the hosting costs keep growing, so there is movement. But I wouldn't say we're very far in analyzing that, and that's of course something we will. The same for the portal. I mentioned the one-stop shop, the kind of web page twin to the April database. It's existed not even a year, but we will of course also look into how that has been used and whether we can boost its use further. But the primary, I should stress that. Because we are not a nation, we're not a country in the EU. The primary consumer engagement is really not, is further, let's say, it's not really directly with the Commission. I think we don't have the ambition of really being the first line. It will be national campaigns based on the European label, based on sometimes coordinated communication actions supported by the EU. But we are not the ones that are really the experts in doing this. This is really more nationally and with the intermediaries as Nicole also mentioned, consumer organizations and so on.
Great, thanks. Mohammed, do you want to address this question?
Yeah, we also have like an app called TAQA, and we based it on the downloads and the QR when they scan the QR codes also. And we also have, this app is connected to a full database of all the products, make and model, and it's searchable, you can know which level. And also we have the other app that's connected to the TAQA app, where if you find some counterfeit or labels, you can make a report. So we also have these numbers too. So from both the apps, we can have, if you can report a product or also download the app. So mainly that's how we get our numbers.
Great. Okay. Very good. Well, let's now go to Niels. Niels, do you have a question for your fellow speakers?
I do, because I found this very interesting. That I think we could perhaps learn more from other regions and countries on this database and how you use it. What Mohammed just said, but also what Hubert said, the geolocation of retailers, that's far more advanced than we are, and the Chinese. The Chinese database. I'd be interested for an analysis, an overview and analysis of these kinds of databases. I don't know if it exists. If anybody has an overview of which jurisdictions have which databases, and I mean I know the American one. But that would be very interesting, I think, and potentially fruitful to kind of learn from each other on that. What features could be added, could be considered, and so on. So I'd be very, very interested in any resource or material that any of you have, or perhaps collaborating on exploring this further. Thank you.
Well, maybe we should pose this question to Nicole and Sophie and ask you two first if you're aware of any surveys of such databases. Nicole?
Yeah, we've been at CLASP looking at product databases for a while, first with the SEED initiative, but also just for our own purposes as we're working with a number of countries. We've been working with several programs to build these product databases, so trying to gather as much information as possible and advise on what might work best for them. We haven't made anything public yet, but that's certainly something I'll communicate as a matter of interest, and we can also help. We can also, organize some discussions around it as well, or if you're interested in learning more about the China the China database, for example, we can help organize some laterals on that.
Sophie, as SEED coordinator, what do you say?
Oh, that would be very interesting to have a webinar on this topic, of course, because I worked on it, but a long time ago. So it was rather on the structure of the database and what information it should contain rather than on the add-ons it can have and all the related services it can provide. So I think it would be absolutely important. I also know that the UNEP program U4E has a tool to develop the database as well. So they should be also involved in this conversation.
Great. So, Mohammed, maybe you want to say something here, and maybe if you could share a little bit about the examples that you look to when developing your own databases.
Yeah, since like SEEK is like has an alliance with many government entities like the Ministry of Commerce, the Saudi Customs, Ministry of Industry, and also the Saudi Standards, which is really the ones that publish the label. So all these government entities have all the data, and we can access with each other all these data. So we can access all the database of every single product that comes into Saudi Arabia, or also is like made in Saudi Arabia. So all these data is easily accessible from between these government entities. So and like I said, the app is connected to these databases. There's an own website where you can go especially for the cars, where you can search your make and model, get all the information. And in the QR code, just like Hubert said, like when you scan it, it can suggest for you other products or that are more efficient. So it can access the database and searches the same product you want, but a more efficient way from other brands or other places. So so it helps if you have this alliances and communication with these different government entities to make this database.
That's a really essential point. The amount of, you shouldn't underestimate the amount of coordination among different ministries, departments, agencies that's required. Hubert, do you want to say anything on this point?
Yes, just to thank Neil and say we are humbled to know that some initiatives that we took have also turned into something that others can learn. But first of all, to also submit that we took our concept from the European database, when we started, because as I said, we didn't need to reinvent the wheel. So the concept was taken from there to come up with a database. We also looked at the U4E product database, and importantly, we formed an internal committee. So I must put on record that this database, this app we are talking about, was done internally by our own staff, our own IT staff. So we formed an interdepartmental committee where we gave out the concepts to the IT team, and then they started putting the things together. So that's how come we came about the framework. Now, the unique feature about compliance is that we carry out market surveillance in various shops. So we thought about it that, well, if we are able to tell the compliance of the shop, how does the consumer know this? So we realized that, well, picking the GPS location of the shop will be a good indicator for the IT team to incorporate it into the app. And that is exactly what we did. So our app has a nationwide information on all the shops that retail appliances, and also indicates the compliance level of each shop. So this motivates even other shops who are probably hiding in the black market to say, look, we want to also be on your app. Can you visit our showroom and rate our compliance level? So it gives us the opportunity to be able to visit other shops and also inform the consumer. The GPS location allows the consumer to click on the nearby shop, and it works like the Uber or Uber app or Bolt app, where it gives you location. So once you click on the nearby shop, there is a map that will generate and show you the distance from where you are, your current location, to that shop. And it gives the, as I said, the consumer the information to be able to decide around his vicinity which shops are readily available. And so there are other add-ons we hope to put onto the app, like comparison, where a consumer can opt to choose a particular appliance in the case of refrigerator and compare brands of the same volumes and see the effects of them. So we intend to add more to it, but also to mention that, Niels, our doors are open for collaboration. We also hope to learn more from Mohammed, and once Sophie and the team are looking to have a bilateral on this, we could look at a session where we talk about these initiatives, these innovations that are coming into developing product database. We've moved away from just the framework of a database to what can make the database more user-friendly and more efficient. Thank you.
That's great. Now, let's return to Mohammed. Do you have a question for your fellow speakers?
Yes, I have a question, like especially for Neil and also the rest. Like when you add these like new labels, like specifically like for the mobile phone, and do you just launch it, or what's your plan like to make everybody aware of it? It's like in terms of we're talking about awareness, what is like your go-to approach for these kind of like new ideas or new implementations?
I'm afraid to say the answer is not as impressive or systematic as you're working with communication, Mohammed, because let's say, I think we principally rely on national campaigns to launch this. We do fund. We offer EU support for projects where then different member states, organizations get together and to prepare this kind of. So we do have some campaigns when we introduce new labels. Right now, one is called Compliance Services, which is an EU-funded product where different people, organizations come together and prepare proactively materials to kind of help retailers, to help suppliers comply and explain. But we don't do anything that I'm aware of. We do very little in terms of corporate communication from the Commission on the, spot TV spots and so on. We don't have funds for that. We don't have a tradition for doing that. So it's not very impressive. I think people will discover it basically by going to the shop or online. But we could certainly up our game there, I think. I don't think I can teach you anything on that.
No, I mean, like I just saw as a follow-up, because it's interesting to me is, I mean, the EU, the difference is you have many labels, many products with the labels, and maybe before, do you like rely on like the people already understand it from the past years? It's not something new, it's just an addition, and they always, when they see it, they just like know what it is exactly and how to read it. Is that what you rely on?
No, not really. Let's say the main scale, yes. I think the colored A to G scale, I think people do understand that's how the energy efficiency of the appliance. They won't necessarily understand precisely how that is measured or defined, what metrics are involved. But I don't think they necessarily need to. But then you have the supplementary icons that I showed, and which differ from product to product. And those certainly, I think, need often complementary explanations to be understood. And I think we have varying success with. I think the smartphones is really well done. I don't think it takes a long time for a retailer or somebody else to explain this, to understand it. But we have, but as I said, there will be material. Also, the industry is preparing their own campaigns to roll out and explain this to consumers. And we have on the one-stop shop website that there we also have these kinds of explanations. I may even be able to find it and send you in this chat. When I stop talking, I can do that. But so we do have stuff going on, and we don't have. It's not a kind of massive information campaign, I would say, unfortunately.
Well, thanks, Niels. Hubert, regarding the consumer app that you developed, was there any outreach? Did you have any soap opera stars shown on screen using the app or anything like that?
Exactly. So what we have decided to do is the celebrity endorsement. and as well as come up with animations. So we are currently developing an animation on how to use the app. And once that is available, again, we'll take advantage of the low-hanging fruit, which is social media, whilst also sharing the information on the traditional media space, television, and then radio. The other component is, once I mentioned about the introducing the quiz aspect of the awareness creation, it becomes very critical because the consumers have to download this app to be informed, about some of these information. So yes, we'll take advantage of celebrities displaying information on how to use the app, as well as animations that will be shared on traditional media and then social media.
Great. Thanks so much, Hubert. So we do have one question online, and it goes to, and I think it's directed to you, Niels, but I think others can also answer it, regarding the product information sheets. Question is there a wider scope for them to tackle or handle misinformation that might be seen in other advertisements and so forth? Is there any way of dealing with misleading claims? No, we've heard about reporting from Hubert, reporting, let's see, we've heard about reporting of fake labels and so forth, but what do you think?
I mean, this is a very important question, I think, and we we also have the feature on the April to report erroneous registration. So if a user sees something that looks fishy or strange, he can report it, and that goes both to the manufacturer, the supplier that registered, but it also goes to the market surveillance authorities in the country where the establishment of the supplier. So we have that reported feature issue, and then we are increasingly adding plausibility checks into the registration phase. So when a supplier registers a product, he will be warned if something looks strange. We are also now starting to do some screenings, product by product, full screenings of all the data to see if there are obvious outliers and so on, and help market surveillance authorities spot that. And then, of course, we have introduced the digital identity verification mechanism, which is that now you can't actually get anything on the portal or into the database unless you have your identity has been validated by an independent, it's called a qualified trust service provider. This is kind of the digital identification approach in the EU. It's cross-sector. It's a horizontal regulation and approach, where basically it's a means of certifying the validity of and origins and so on of documents online, and that in the future, since October, all suppliers, they have to become validated. That one, they are who they are, but secondly, that they're established in the EU, because you have to be established in the EU to be able to register in the database. That's the legal requirement of the regulation. So that provides a level of safety that is legitimate companies, existing companies that who they came to be, that register things you can see online. And another one, that's a side effect of what our work with the platforms. Actually, some of the platforms now starting, when they advertise products, they start to ask for the April identifier. And that's also a kind of a check implicitly whether it's a legitimate and compliant product. Because it's not compliant if it's not registered, and you can't give an April identifier of your own if you haven't registered. So that's, but I mean, there's a lot left to do there still, I think. We do have what I just said is creates other problems, because the platforms, they don't necessarily know what's in and out of scope, and then so they challenge merchants to for not having registered perfectly legitimate products that are out of scope. But since that's a complicated decisions, especially for light sources, this is now causing some problems. So there are pros and cons of these kinds of checks, but I think ultimately, we will try to use the database as smartly as we can to support market surveillance, but there needs to be a market surveillance. There needs to be real people out there somewhere spending time on following up on reports and checking for compliance.
Well, that sounds like another budget line. So, Nicole, I wanted to thank you for offering to at least entertain the idea that CLASP will follow up on exchanges on some of the ideas that have been raised here. And Sophie, as coordinator for one of the Hub's task groups, I wonder, I'd like to ask you to say a few words about what you heard here today and what sort of follow-up might be warranted for SEED.
Okay, so first of all, I thank the speakers very much because I've learned a lot during this session. And so I'm very happy to see all that's going on. I think as a follow-up for SEED, we will organize a webinar on databases because it seems to be a crucial question. It also made me think about the evaluation of these programs because on the one hand, there is a lot going on, and I would like to learn more from Mohammed about all the statistics you are getting back, the feedback from all the tools you are and the campaigns you are implementing. However, does it have an impact on the sales? Do we know if all of this, I know we can't separate exactly what is the result of an information campaign compared to what is the result of having a MEPS for a new label, for example, but we need overall to follow up what's going on the market and on the sales. And this is very often a problematic issue to get the sales data. So at some point, we will have to involve retailers and manufacturers maybe in this conversation, maybe again for a SEED webinar in the future.
Great. Well, thank you, Sophie, very, very much. And thanks again for setting the scene. Mohammed, Niels, Hubert, really glad that you could join us and share your country's experience. And Nicole, thank you very much for broadening the view that we were able to have here. As I said at the top, we'll post a recording of this session. We'll also put together a summary to encapsulate some of what the great deal of material we've heard here today so that you can have that in written form. And I want to thank everybody who joined us online to listen. This has been a really great session, and I look forward to seeing many of you next time. Thanks, and have a good rest of your day.